So, the only things I really remembered about this episode before my rewatch were the giant rubber and sometimes not rubber snake, along with Buffy beating that snake until fluid shot out of it. And since this is Buffy the Vampire Slayer, I'm forced to wonder, how is the snake a penis metaphor this time? Also, what's with David Fury and giant reptile penis monsters?
I think it comes to us.
But Shadow's inability to leave a lasting impression in my mind may have less to do with any of its qualitative aspects and more to do with a useful coping mechanism I have. This 3-episode run of Shadow listening to Fear and Into the Woods also raises a curious question with regards to Buffy's character, one that is very much at the heart of the series. After the incredible Fool for Love ended, with Buffy finding out that Joyce had found a shadow on her brainy bits, this episode wastes no time in giving me a case of the swirly, nervy stomach swizzles with this shot of Joyce getting a follow-up scan. Meanwhile, at the Magic Box, Giles has paid for an advertisement in the Yellow Pages. My favorite part of this is the all-caps declaration of death charms. Xander shares with Giles that they discovered Riley's grenade stunt from the previous episode. This piece of information feels very important to a certain Slayer someone who is not currently in this scene with them. And in her only significant appearance since the first one, she who shall always be named, the shiny, effervescently special Glorificus, is back and is given a spell by one of her minions. I love this minion's name. Dreg. Dregs are the remnants of a liquid left in a container, together with any sediment or grounds. The minion says it's really more of a recipe for a spell, and she needs to go grocery shopping to make it work. Thankfully, there is just such a grocer for these kinds of items in town.
I want these.
Riley discovers the door to the Summers' home partway open and finds Spike sweater sniffing in Buffy's bedroom, fantasizing about something hot. Like maybe the time she punctured one of his lungs or fractured his neck or something. I saw a comment or two about this saying, man, it really makes Spike seem like a gross creep. Yeah. Spike is a gross creep. Never forget.
I'll make it quick. It won't hurt a bit.
What exactly did it take to pry apart the Slayer's dimpled knees?
See you face the evil alone, for once.
He's definitely a charismatic and charming gross creep, but it's important to remember that he's still a creep. Having been caught in the act by Riley, Spike deflects by trying to bait him into a pissing contest, which works.
Buffy took her to hospital for a bit of prod and probe.
Funny her not calling you about that.
I've known since last night.
Yeah, but Spike also just happened to be in the right place at the right time because he wanted to blow Buffy's head off. Still, Riley lets it work.
You don't know anything about Buffy. You never did. I'm the one that knows what she needs.
Oh, yeah?
Actually, fellers, never mean to interrupt a good ding-dong measuring contest, but isn't Buffy the one who knows what she needs? Anya discovers Giles sold 2 dangerous items together.
Are you stupid or something?
And Giles realizes he may have sold the items to Glorificus. At the hospital, Buffy gets the news. I like the way this exchange is written. For a time, the doctor uses the strategic language of someone sharing devastating news with a family member. That is, until the scene decays into him asking about power lines and cell phones without looking up from his clipboard. We get a complicated scene between Dawn and Riley that I quite enjoy, and with some nice acting by Marc Blucas. As hard a time as I've ever given Riley as a character, none of that was an issue with Blucas's performance. Buffy decides that Glory has put a shadow spell on Joyce and turns to the gang for magical intervention, but everyone seems to be avoiding an uncomfortable truth. Glory's trying to change a little snake into a big snake that can find Dawn.
Is this a penis metaphor?
I really don't know anymore. I actually think the CG version looks decent. Yes, maybe because of the lighting, he doesn't quite look in the environment. The shot is more like a video game cutscene from the time, but let's not forget where the bar was. The full-on prosthetic is the problem child with this one, as every time it turns, it's like watching a rubber statue go for a ride on a lazy Susan. The snake goes after Dawn, Buffy chases Snake to Glory's front door, beats it soupy, and the episode ends with a bit of archy plot stuff that we'll get into in a minute. Shadow is a solid episode, even if it's one that I don't look forward to when I do rewatches of the series. The episode is the first of a dreary run of 3 from here to Into the Woods that feels collectively like one big continuous episode, more than anything else. The run takes two plots that have been B stories so far this season, the Bailey tailspin and Joyce's illness, and puts them front and center. And from my perspective as a fan, one of those induces a certain amount of dread and pathos from me, and the other one is about Riley. And because of that, this episode feels like it has a bit of the old back half of season 4 problems, in that Riley, who just hasn't been talking to Buffy all season about his feelings, one of my least favorite wells for drama, is now in a situation where he absolutely cannot without making Joyce's illness and Buffy's family struggles about him, even if he's been making Buffy's family struggles about him since Out of My Mind.
I should really go check on my mom.
Everybody hurts.
While that means that the episode has an interesting metatextual thing going on in that Riley somehow feels like a centerpiece of an episode about Buffy grappling with her anxiety over Joyce's illness, it still doesn't change the fact that Riley is far from the show's most compelling character. This one makes the tailspin definitive, and it does so in an ugly way, but it would be foolish to say that anything we run into this season wasn't present from the very beginning. I summed up a fair amount of it in Out of My Mind. The Riley theme from season 4 was that he needed to rebel against a system that denied him choice and freedom, and so prevented him from being his authentic self.
I am how they train me.
Manifesting authentic identity requires taking advantage of the choices presented to you, as well as having the freedom to do so. So thanks in no small part to Buffy's influence, Riley rebelled, and since then he has pretty much been in a holding pattern.
Is there anything I can do?
Give me an order.
He's torn down the facades of his old identity, but isn't building anything new in their place. He no longer has any idea who he is, and leaves Buffy as his sole source of love and validation.
You used to have a mission, and now you're what? Mission's boyfriend?
This is a tough position we all may find ourselves in sometimes, and red arrowy bare chests and cringe-inducing pseudo-romantic lines aside, I feel for the guy, I really do. Now is the time to be throwing stuff against the wall, Riley, and seeing what sticks. You should be taking a cooking class, painting ceramic mugs, or making your first YouTube video. Learn to play the xylophone or perform close-up magic. It's a tough position to be in, and the only way out that I know of is through wild experimentation to try and create a spark. But instead, he has all his eggs in the Buffsters basket. The thing about identity-driven tailspins is we're all hyper-prone to interpreting any event as validity of the things we're most afraid of and ignoring other possible interpretations. Riley's driving fear he outright stated in The Replacement.
She doesn't love me.
In this episode, Buffy didn't tell him what was going on with Joyce, but did tell Spike, who, like her ex and the smoldery and thrally master,
Bader,
is dark and bumpy in the forehead region. That must mean
she doesn't love me.
Dawn well and truly dawns up the situation at the merry-go-round when she brings up Angel and says to Riley,
she doesn't get all worked up like that over you.
Which must mean
she doesn't love me.
Etc., etc. Rinse and repeat until broody, depressed, and bad decisions ensue. Except, there are other possibilities on the table. Buffy didn't tell Riley about Joyce, but she didn't tell any of the Scoobies either. Spike only knew because he went over to Buffy's that evening to blow her brains out with a shotgun. Spike does poke Riley in his feely bags at the beginning of the episode, but why is he taking relationship feedback from Spike?
Can't any one of your damned little Scooby Club at least try to remember that I hate you all?
The only thing more absurd would be accepting the romantic insights of a 15-year-old as gospel. As we talked about with Xander in Season 4, people can mostly only hurt us with words that we already fear might be true. Whether or not Buffy actually loves him is up for debate. She may never have verbally returned his I love you, but love has many languages. Buffy was extremely verbally affectionate with Angel and slept with him once. Buffy is not very verbally intimate with Riley, but expresses a tremendous amount of physical affection for him. The only way to the real truth is a conversation that Riley isn't having because he's too afraid of being right about the things he fears and risking the only thing in his life that feels meaningful. All of this culminates with a pretty dark turn in the episode. In the bar, where Riley once wondered desperately what was good and what was evil, Riley gives Sandy consent to bite him and then dusts her. It's horrendous on multiple levels. Yes, Sandy is an unchipped vampire, but she didn't attack Riley. Yes, Buffy had a thing with Dracula, but he was all sorts of thrally. This is not something Buffy would do. We'll talk about the whole cheating metaphor that this represents in a later episode, but Riley baiting and unthreatening Sandy into this before staking her rings as cruelty. Look at the way Buffy treats Spike, a vampire incapable of physical harm to anyone. Sandy ends up having one of the most most tragic arcs of any minor character in all of the Buffyverse. All the evil that was done to her, being vamped by Doppelgangland Willow and staked for vamping with consent, was done to her by the supposed good guys. We'll talk more about Biley over the course of this little trilogy, but there are a few other interesting odds and ends to this one. The title Shadow may have some extra connotations beyond the obvious. Mutant Enemy does love itself some double meanings.
I've got a shadow.
There is only one use of the word shadow in this episode, and it's in Glory's spell.
The power is yours to see what is unseen, to find what is shrouded in shadow.
Dawn, the key, is the thing in shadow that Glory is looking for. There's a working fan theory that this confirms that Dawn and the massive memory spell that was necessary to bring her into being is what is responsible for what is happening to Joyce. I've most often heard the theory pointed out, among other various reasons that a fan may not care for Dawn. To which I say, first, that I don't think this was ever confirmed or denied by the writers, and I can't think of other evidence for it. It also seems odd that if this were the case, no one else who received memory implants suffers ill effects, and finally, even if it were true, blaming Dawn for it makes no sense. It was these guys doing that did the doing.
You two are the two who are the two.
There's also a very deep-cut joke in the episode that reminded me a little of Willow's Allen Ginsberg poster in her locker from season 2.
Alistair Crowley sings. Sadly, no, I don't carry that, but I do have some very nice whale sounds.
According to Wikipedia, Aleister Crowley was an English occultist, identifying himself as a prophet, entrusted with guiding humanity into the Aeon of Horus in the early 20th century. In the Book of Thoth, when describing the Lust Tarot card, Crowley wrote, "At the top of the card is shown an emblem in the new light, with the 10 horns of the beast, which are serpents, sent forth in every direction to destroy and recreate the world," which makes this a rare Buffyverse snake that is not actually a penis metaphor. Oh my god, we did it. But of course, somewhere in the midst of all of this is Buffy. The more significant takeaway to the episode is that Buffy didn't call the Scoobies either.
I mean, until we knew what it was.
A human enough coping mechanism, not wanting to acknowledge that the thing might be something instead of nothing. Calling on someone requires acknowledging the reality that it could be something. And yet, her interactions with both Spike and Fool for Love and Riley here, who were both just in the right place at the right time to offer comfort, indicate that she does have some desire for the support. And yet, there's been a long, ongoing exploration on the show. What is the difference between strong and tough? And if suffering in some form is inevitable, is it something that Buffy need do alone? In Prophecy Girl, Buffy went to face the Master alone and save the world, but it was her friends that saved her. After the events of season 2, Buffy left Sunnydale to suffer by herself, but it wasn't until Giles's persistent non-spell that she finally unburdened herself of what had happened.
So I told him that I loved him, and I kissed him, and I killed him. I'm sorry. It's okay. I've been holding on to that for so long. Felt good to get it out.
It's something of a pattern. The pressure on her builds to the point where it becomes the very weight of the world, and she finally opens up. Because there is strength and catharsis in the willingness to be vulnerable. But as of season 5, something has shifted, and Buffy has begun to open up last with the Scoobies. Season 4 was about the group fracturing and finding their way back to each other, but as much as she was able to confidently evict the first Slayer from her mind, a number of things were said that are at the heart of what Buffy grapples with for the rest of the show.
No friends, just to kill. We are alone.
You think you know what's to come? What you are? You haven't even begun.
Is it inevitable that Buffy will scar and harden against the constant and unpredictable onslaught of an uncaring universe? Is it necessary that we sacrifice a part of ourselves on the altar of adulthood? Those are some of the questions for these upcoming seasons.